Welcome to Resourced and Resourceful Leadership, a podcast for people who care about the world and their impact in it. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Pettit. Thank you for listening in today. The other day, I was perusing a local shop and came across a pin that said, "I like being alive." And although I don't really wear pins on my clothing much, the message was so compelling to me that after some consideration, I circled back and bought it. I like being alive. Such a simple saying carries so much meaning for me right now. It carries meaning because I really do like being alive, and that hasn't always been the case. I've had some really low points in my life where all I wanted was relief from the pain I was experiencing. I'm also so aware of the precariousness of life in the midst of so much death. Death that's far away, the death of terror, genocide, and war, death that's close by, the people I mourn, and the recent deaths that people in my community and family are mourning. 2 unexpected deaths within the span of a week have been particularly resonant. Burdette, a Long Beach community member whose deep faith rooted her activism. And honestly, every time I saw her love and her commitment for justice just radiated out. And Ted Swagerty, a family friend whose many descriptors include son, brother, uncle, friend, and life of the party. And so my gratitude for life is amplified by my awareness of the loss of it. That it's not fair or it's not just, the pain, and sometimes the relief that comes with death. If you're still listening, thank you. I always get a little self-conscious when I talk about death and grief, the latter of which is the topic for today's episode. I think the self-consciousness comes from not wanting to bring anyone down, and also the cultural lessons I internalized about surfacing difficult emotions and topics, or rather to not bring them to the surface. But to live is to eventually die, and joy and grief are 2 sides of the same coin. So here we are. Despite the joy of the holiday season, it is also a time when grief may come to visit. And it's a time of a lot of expectations, and sometimes expectations that are not met. It's a time where we remember people that we've lost. And so to the grief, I say welcome. I'm going to share some writing and reflections on how I've learned to work with grief. And I hope there's something that can be helpful to you. 2 years ago, in November, I wrote an email with the subject "Good Grief" to the people on my email list. At the time, I wrote, "The topic of grief is calling me tonight, and there's a wisdom there, so I'm going to follow it. It's not that I have all the answers on grief. It's not that there's only one way to grieve. But what I do know is that it's important to make space for grief. There is so much to grieve in the world, from the interpersonal to the geopolitical and everything in between. This Friday is the 2nd anniversary of my mom's death. 4.5 years ago, faced with the news that my mom's kidneys were failing and her overall health was declining, I would find myself surprised to be suddenly crying in my car in between meetings or during some other brief pause in my day. Sadness seeped out of me in unexpected ways and places, wherever it could in the small openings in my busy, newish mom, sandwich generation, running an organization, executive director life. It seemed my grief needed an outlet, and I wasn't sure what to do with it, so off I went to the grief coach who I worked with a few years prior when I was preparing to become a mom in the midst of major life upheavals. This time around, we only met for one session, a tune-up of sorts, But what I walked away with was a practice so helpful and powerful that I want to share it with you. The practice is to allow space for the grief. What this looked like for me was every evening for a few weeks, I lit a candle and set a timer for 10 minutes to be with my grief. Sometimes I journaled, sometimes I cried, sometimes I got bored. Mostly I acknowledged and felt the grief. And as I allowed it some intentional space, it began to soften and move through me. The random sobbing spells stopped. My mom lived for 2.5 more years. Allowing for the grief freed me to accept our fractured relationship, to repair what I could out of love and for my own healing, to visit as often as felt right, and to say everything I needed to, even if her dementia didn't allow her to fully respond. So that's what I wrote 2 years ago, and it is a practice that I have used at least one other time. I'm thinking of like a time where I really needed to set that intention of regularly allowing space for my grief. And it's also something that I recommend to coaching clients that I work with and just anyone in my life really who the topic of grief comes up. It is something that I know some of the folks I've talked with are really hesitant to allow for grief. I think there is a fear that it will overtake, and maybe even some past experiences with not being able to move through sad feelings or what might be labeled as negative feelings. So I definitely encourage people to get support and to do what feels comfortable and supportive for them. But I found this practice of allowing space for grief and really like being intentional about setting that candle, lighting that candle, setting the timer, and just being with it, welcoming it in whatever form I needed. So I guess I was really on a roll talking about grief because the next month I wrote about walking with my grief. So I wrote, last weekend I dropped my daughter off for a play date and decided to go on a walk by myself. As I drove to the park I would walk at, I had an intuitive flash to take my grief on the walk with me. It surprised me a bit because I felt good and didn't feel like I was actively grieving. So when I pulled my car in to park, I thought, no, I don't need to take my grief for a walk. I'll use this time to think about what's next in my business instead. As soon as I had this thought, I felt a lump in my throat and tears welled up in my eyes. Okay, I guess my grief wants some attention. So I invited grief to join me on my walk. And it turned out that anxiety wanted to come along too, so I welcomed that feeling as well. I imagined them walking along beside me, being seen, being acknowledged, having room to breathe, healing. It wasn't a depressing walk. In fact, it was quite lovely. I felt calm, and it was a gorgeous day. I relished the blue sky and the nature around me. That calm carried into the week. So again, making space for the grief, whatever's coming up. In this case, I walked with the grief. You can tune into your body and notice where it lives in your body. Connect with it, breathe into it. You can write from the perspective of grief. You could dance with your grief. You can invite your grief to tea. I've heard of people saying, when I wash the dishes, I'm going to allow my grief during that time. So just making space for it again can be really helpful in that transformation. Of course, it's not just the loss of life we grieve. We miss out. A relationship goes sideways. Something we hold dear is tarnished or ends. A hope we have is dashed. We get disillusioned from a closely held belief. We grieve a loss of hope, safety, security for ourselves or others. Last week, I shared some writing about pulling difficult emotions closer instead of pushing them down or away, as we are so often conditioned to. I wrote, sometimes acknowledging your feelings is all that is needed for more ease to enter. And I shared the Rumi quotation, the hurt you embrace becomes joy. Now, joy may take some time. It's okay. There's no hurry. There's no need to skip over the grief. And sometimes you might want to take a break from it. In my case, Schitt's Creek is my personal favorite comfort show. I've watched it at least 7 times through over the years. I think over the last 6 years, so a little more than one time a year. Though I think it was on heavy rotation in the early, like 2019 era, and then, yeah, kind of earlier in these recent years. But I've watched it at least 7 times through as I was navigating my mom's health issues and the death of my uncle, among other things. I've also drawn inspiration from songs over the years, so I thought I'd share some of the lyrics from those as I get ready to wrap up this episode. One of them is by Dar Williams. It's the song After All, and I actually had a blog that I wrote in, I think it was like 2009 to 2011 is when I was writing that blog. It's called The Line I Crossed, and it's from a lyric, yeah, it's from this song. And another song that has inspired me around, I think both of the songs have like that, the bittersweet nature of life are part of these songs. So the other one is Nina Simone's Ain't Got No, I Got Life. And I went back and looked at my old blog, which was called The Line I Crossed. And so in 2011, which ended up being both a deeply challenging and pivotal year for me, I wrote, the name of this blog is taken from Dar Williams' song After All. She sang, and when I chose to live, there was no joy. It's just a line I crossed. It wasn't worth the pain my death would cost, so I was not lost or found. And I continued to write, but lately, when I choose to live, joy is involved. This particular song lifts my spirits, lulls me to sleep, gets me out of bed, gets me out of the house. And then I linked to a YouTube video of Nina Simone playing the piano and singing Ain't Got No, I Got Life. So I just wanted to kind of look at those lyrics and share some of them with you, and I'll link to the songs so that way you can listen if you want to, or find or read the lyrics. Of course, now my computer is like, I don't want to show you them. Let's see. Let me just see if I can reset this really quick. Okay. So I'll read a few verses. It starts out, go ahead, push your luck, find out how much love the world can hold. Once upon a time I had control and reined my soul in tight. Well, the whole truth is like the story of a wave unfurled. But I held the evil of the world, so I stopped the tide, froze it up from inside, and it felt like a winter machine that you go through and then you catch your breath and winter starts again, and everyone else is spring-bound. And when I chose to live, there was no joy, it's just a line I crossed. It wasn't worth the pain my death would cost, so I was not lost or found. And then there's some verses kind of about family, and you should definitely listen if you're not familiar with Dar Williams. There's some like beautiful lyrical storytelling in her songs. And I love later on, In the song, there's a few verses that say, "Well, the sun rose with so many colors, it nearly broke my heart and worked me over like a work of art. And I was a part of all that. So go ahead, push your luck. Say what it is you got to say to me. We will push on back into that mystery, and it'll push right back, and there are worse things than that. Because for every price and every penance that I could think of, it's better to have fallen in love than never to have fallen at all. Because when you live in a world, well, it gets to who you thought you'd be, and now I laugh at how the world changed me. I think life chose me after all." Listen to the whole thing. That's a part of it. And then Nina Simone brings a different energy that I love. And so the song, which you should just listen and dance to, is like, "I ain't got no home, ain't got no shoes, ain't got no money, ain't got no class, ain't got no skirts, ain't got no sweater, ain't got no perfume, ain't got no bed, ain't got no man, ain't got no culture, ain't got no mother, ain't not got no culture." She goes on. And then she says, "Hey, what have I got? Why am I alive anyway? Yeah, what have I got nobody can take away?" And then she sings, "Got my hair, got my head, got my brains, got my ears, got my eyes, got my nose, got my mouth." Okay, I'm not going to turn this into karaoke. "I got my smile." So, anyway, she goes on. She's got this. And then she says, "I've got life, I've got my freedom." So, those are two songs that are like touching, inspirational, bring in kind of that, like I said, the bittersweetness of life, the inspiration. I wanted to share them with you. And so I'm wrapping up this episode with gratitude to you for listening. And I would love to hear from you what stood out to you from this episode. I'd also love to hear, like, what's your relationship with grief? Do you have any things that have been helpful to you when you've been grieving or moving through grief? What do you wish you knew, or what do you wish someone did while you were grieving? I don't know. I want to hear it all. And if you want to hear more of the Resourced and Resourceful Leadership podcast, please follow or subscribe to the show wherever you like to listen to your podcasts. Definitely tune in next week for my very fun and inspiring interview with Emily Duval Ledger, who is a rad human being as well as a personal trainer, business coach, nature nerd, roller skater, and joy bringer. To support the show, please leave a 5-star review and share the show with a few people who you think would appreciate it. And please check out the link to SpeakPipe in the show notes. I'd love it if you left me a message. Thanks again, and take good care. Oh, and P.S., shout out to my weekly listeners. I know Babs and Miles are among them, so shout out to you. And if you're a weekly listener who hasn't revealed yourself yet, let me know, please. I want to hear from you. You can just send me a text or an email or whatever, message through my website, or of course a message on SpeakPipe. But I would love to hear from you and be in conversation with you. All right. Thank you. Bye.